Good morning.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning.
Good to join you inside the huddle, Steve.
Good to have you here. Good to be with everyone.
Good morning, everyone. What did you call this today? Happy Tax Day?
Well, I didn't. Michelle did. I didn't call it Happy Tax Day.
No such thing.
Michelle Zane said it was Happy Tax Day.
Well, the great thing about our business is that we have tax problems, right?
Yeah, I've heard it put that way, that if you've got a tax problem, you should be proud. I don't know about that, but I've never felt proud paying taxes. I don't think, especially when you hit certain tax brackets, but it helps our fellow man. I'm all for it.
Oh, I'm going to get started there. I think we have a much more upbeat topic for today.
Yeah. Hey, good morning, everyone. Sean and I were prepping as we always do on Fridays, and we hit on a couple of topics. One that struck me was it was really great having Sky Michaels at our regional sales meeting, and Sky is amazing, as is Emily and all of you that partake in that. There were a couple of things one in particular that stood out that I thought Sean and I were going to cover today, and that is, in an indirect way, he was describing some of the keys to success and what success is. In fact, at some point, I think he even called the question, what is success to you, right? And I think one of the keys to success in my life, what I've observed in other people, is it's being persistently motivated and strongly motivated to the things that matter to you, right? Like, so I have found that people that perform at the highest level, they have a relationship with their goals, let's say, and in that relationship, it motivates them. And I've also, when I heard like what does success look like, I think success is deeply personal. I can tell you, when I started in my journey as a real estate agent, I had people I looked up to that I'd like to be like. As a sales manager, I got into that discipline. There were people I looked up to, I thought I wanted to be like, and some I still do, and others I wouldn't want to choose the path or be on the same path to get the level of success that they're experiencing, right? They were either doing things or being a certain way that once I discovered that wasn't for me, right? And so I thought we would talk about that and identify what I have found is the 5 C's. Not an original idea. I had this taught to me years ago by a mentor, but in my own personal way, I thought we could go over those 5 C's, and maybe if you have something to write down, those of you today, if you're not driving, but you're sitting at your desk like my friend John there, maybe you could take out a scratch pad or replay this so that you can get to what those 5 C's are. But Sean, I think I've been talking nonstop for 2 minutes. Your turn.
Well, I loved it. The 5 C's, you introduced this idea to me on Friday, and I loved it. So it's kind of your baby. I think this is a really, really good framework to help us understand success, how we define it, and maybe a little bit who we want to be in that success.
Right. To achieve higher things, right, or a higher performance level, requires that you put yourself, you're going to go down a path that certainly will require a higher learning curve, a higher skill development curve. And so ultimately I remember one of my mentors saying, you have to ask yourself a question of, why am I doing this? Like, and I've heard that we've all heard the why, like, and I don't want to get into that because I think in some cases when people talk about your big why, it's, I don't know. It strikes me somewhat lazy, or just it's a big question that doesn't provide clarity and focus. It just sends you off dreaming. Where I think, and you and I think I think we both agree that understanding what your purpose is really about taking action to put you on a path of action, not about staying in a constant state of thinking. Right? You achieve by doing, and so what I think of is that if I have a relationship with my goals, I think about what will I do, what will I have, and who will I be, right? So the question is, what experiences could I have if I achieve my goals? Like what would this do for me? What things could I have if I achieve my goals? And in other words, it could be a possession. It could be something you own. But then lastly, it's, who could I be if I achieve my goals? What kind of person would I be at the end? And what I have found, and there are 5 C's that we're going to talk about in a second, and every time I've sat down with someone, if that person has a relationship with these 5 C's, they seem to have more clarity than most.
Yes. I think that, we're saying the why, it requires action, but there's an action I would suggest people take that then these 5 C's will lead us into it.
Yeah.
And we'll have different ways of defining it. For me, what I use for myself, my family, the people I work with, I say lives of personal greatness. I want to live a life of personal greatness. I want each of you to live a life of personal greatness. And that's defined by you, what makes it great.
Right.
But once you understand that, to do anything but is creates such pain mentally. And I heard it again today. I was driving in, listening to one of my podcasts. The 5-year letter. This woman, she's actually a graphic design, but she now does a lot of things for people designing their lives. She said today, April 18th, is that today?
Yep.
April 18th, 2027. 5 years from now to the day. In detail, in super detailed letter, write that day. Where do you live? What does your home look like? Who are you with? What does each room look like? What kind of bed do you sleep in? What are the sheets? What's your hairstyle?
Wow.
What is it you do? Describe that day from the moment you wake up and brush your teeth to the time that you tuck yourself back in. And if you do that don't edit, this is what it should be, this is what so-and-so wants it to be, and if you just put it out there and then take it out every 6 months and read it, it'll be one of the most spooky things in your life. How close you'll come to that just by having it written now.
Right.
And that becomes the guiding light for what Steve's talking about, for these 5 C's.
Well, the first, and so the first C to me when I sit down, and this is kind of piggybacking off what you just said, is someone who can have that level of detail, that sense, that clarity, is someone that's able to take action, right? If you can, with that specificity about anything in your life, have that, be able to recall it, you're able to take the first C, which is control. Now, the first C is control. And every person I've ever met with who's interviewed me wants to figure that out. How control are you of your thoughts? How much in control are you with your goals? How are you living a life of autonomy? Most people get into real estate to have control of their time. They don't want to work for someone, right? So control is a big word. It's not a manipulative thing. It's something that for everybody means something different. But for everybody, it's important, right? I don't think anybody wants to be the possession or in control of by someone else. I certainly don't. And so, but many people, when you sit down with them and you begin this goal setting process, or or maybe it's a business meeting and they're trying to build a team, you quickly find out that they're not in control of their own time, and yet they're going to try to lead others. So it's an important thing that you have to dive into. So you say to yourself, if I could master the control aspect of my life such that, this is, I am so good at answering this question. What experiences would I have, or could I have, if I have better control? What things would I have if I had better control, and then what would I be? Go ahead, Sean.
Well, something we discussed that I think is a key component of control.
Yeah.
Is understanding and letting go of the things you don't control. Almost the most important aspect of gaining control is realizing what you don't control.
Right. And
being okay with that.
And most people, I certainly to this day can find myself concerned with things I don't control. And then you almost have to, listen to that little voice and say, hey, dum-dum, that's a path to nowhere. That's an energy leak. Focus on what you can do. So,
right, and that's the key, what you can do. I think most of the time we get focused on outcomes, and you don't control outcomes. You write the letter, and then you put it in a drawer and read it every 6 months. We do not control the outcome, only the effort to action.
That's exactly, we talked about that with Sky. I put in the chat at the very end, when we set goals for ourselves, we obsess about we obsess about the results, instead of the actions. We should be obsessing about the actions we're taking in our lives, not the result. Right. This is it's a virus in the human brain that says we have to focus on, I took this action, then I get the result I want. Result. Instead of focusing on every action that you are in control of. You're in control of your actions. Yeah. So anyway, so that's an important piece to
maybe the greatest coach of all time, John Wooden. John Wooden, for those who don't know, was the UCLA basketball coach, one of the winningest coaches, and a philosopher, really, a modern philosopher. But one of the things he said is, I never look at the scoreboard at the end of the game. I just watch my players' face as they come off the floor. And that tells me everything I need to know about whether we won or lost. And he didn't mean by score. He didn't care if they won or lost by score. If the players came off proud of their effort, that was a win, and he was good.
Did you, basketball, say that theme, Mike Krzyzewski just coached his last game at Duke, one of the greatest coaches. He lost in the Final Four, didn't make it to the final, but he was asked if he was proud of, his season or proud of the results or something like that. And he said, every player, myself included, when we got to the locker room, we were crying. And if I've learned anything in all my years of coaching, is that when I see those young men crying, I know they gave it everything they got. And yes, that makes me proud. Love that, because there's that emotional investment, the connection to the outcome, right?
The connection to the effort.
The connection to the effort.
Right.
Excuse me, I misspoke. Thank you. The connection to the effort. So the second C is competence. So when you evaluate yourself, you say, and this is an aha moment I had a long time ago, that I've been around a lot of people with a high aptitude that don't achieve or don't become self-actualized because they're not committed to mastering basic things. So the aha I had in competence, and what I want to stress is it's not about your aptitude, it's about your path to mastery that will determine your outcomes. Mastery is, right, you know something so well, you're committed to it so well, it's a reflex in everything that you do. You're not thinking about anything, it's a reflexive response. It's a intellectually lazy, but I don't think about how I shave. I don't think about how I put deodorant on. I don't think about how I wash myself in the shower. I've mastered tasks and I don't even realize it. I follow patterns, right? So in that comes, you create a pattern when you've mastered something for you.
So I like how, and we're going to see this each step, but I kind of like how these flow together, by the way.
Yeah.
When you start with control, the most important thing, what do I control? What don't I control? And we realize it's our efforts.
Yep.
Okay, that's the only thing I control, and that's what's most important. Don't I want to master them? Doesn't it make sense to, and here's the defining line. Most people will practice something until they get it right. The goal, the key, the thing that you have to put in your head is, I'm going to practice it till I can't do it wrong. That's what Steve's talking about when you say it's unconscious mastery. It's not, look, I've learned how to do this. It's, I don't know how to not do it correctly.
Right. And I think anything you master, you take action on. I believe that. Like if you master anything, you take action on it. So that's why it's so important to understand tasks. And understand and get comfortable with the path to adeptness begins with ineptness.
Right.
Like anything I've ever mastered in my life, I was inept at it in the beginning. So you have to be comfortable in your own skin, knowing that you're on a path, a journey to mastery.
People have probably heard this before, but there's 4 steps. In the beginning, you're unconsciously incompetent.
Yeah.
You're not very good at it, and you don't even know you're not very good at it. Then you become consciously incompetent. Wow, this is something I want to do well, and I don't. Then you become consciously competent. Hey, I've been practicing this. I'm pretty good at it. And finally, you become unconsciously competent.
That's right.
I didn't even realize I just did that.
Right. Yeah. That is mastery, right? That's the high mastery is unconsciously competent.
And that's all we want is mastery over our own actions, our own efforts.
Right.
In our business, just to bring this back to real estate for a moment, it's your dialogues, it's your scripting. That is the primary skill set we have in this particular business. Do you have mastery over that? Because there's nothing that stands in the way, right? That's an action. I can do scripts 100 times a day. I can do it every single day for 100 days in a row. I can absolutely master it.
I hate to bring her up again, but I had the pleasure of working with one of the top agents in the world at one point in the 90s, early 2000s. This is someone who was the #1 agent in the world for RE/MAX. And the day I left that organization, no, not Diana, this was Karen Bernardi.
Oh.
But Karen Bernardi every Monday brought her team together and they practiced scripts. This was a woman that knew her scripts such that, again, remember that mastering scripts isn't about trying to act your way through a relationship with someone else. Mastering scripts they're the pathway to a dialogue, to a higher conversation. That's what mastering scripts give you. If you hear a problem and you've mastered the script to address the problem, all that script is going to do is to allow you to have a high-minded dialogue. What comes after that is a conversation that helps people get their own aha. So critically important to know that, a lot of people will recoil. I don't want to practice scripts. I don't want to sound scripted. And then I just wish half the time I could put a camera on them in a listing presentation and say, look at you, you need to practice your scripts, right? Right?
Because it also allows your client to have a higher minded dialogue.
Your job is to help people get their own ahas.
Right.
They don't know that they don't know that they don't know. And it's your job to open up the dialogue to help them get that aha. When you do that, people buy you because you're developing them. You're developing their thoughts into actionable items. So I want to continue the flow here, right? Yeah.
Because you have this, I love this. It starts with control. And what do we don't control? Once we realize what we do control, we want to achieve mastery. So that's where the confidence comes in.
Right.
If you want to achieve mastery in something, you must first be curious about it.
That's right. That's the third C. Well, that's the third C.
The third C is curious. How do people who do this well do it? Success leaves clues, Steve. You say that all the time.
Yes.
There's people doing the exact same thing that I want. They're achieving what I want. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I just have to be curious.
One thing about high achievers, Sean, that I have been around and coached is that they have a very high level of awareness at all times. It's almost like if you've been to an airport, you see that radar dish spinning around.
Yes.
It's almost as if you could see it. They got one of those mounted to their head, and they're constantly evaluating their environment, the people, the feelings. They have this, we call it EQ, high emotional intelligence. They are just aware of all of these things. So they're very curious. They're not living in a way that says, I've learned all there is to learn, or I know what I know and there's nothing more to know. So they're not living a life of ignorance, because to me, that is ignorance-based living. They're living a life of curiosity. There's more to know, and I know I don't know it. And to me, that is the third component. That's the third C. So I'm glad you hit on that.
I'll give you guys a hint on recognizing someone who's like this, or recognizing if you're already like this. They'll annoy you from time to time.
Yeah.
The curious person can be annoying. The curious person is the one sitting there watching a movie with you who keeps looking things up. Oh, what year did they make this? Oh, did this person make it? They can't not be curious. If sometimes people are looking at you saying, what are you doing now? Because you're curious, good. You're already on your way. I want to know how it works, why it works. And then I want to emulate the parts I need, right? So that I can gain my confidence.
Yeah.
It gives me control. The energy flows back and forth through these C's.
I also think that a byproduct of a curiosity-based person is they are resolved in finding solutions to their problems. So they don't try to solve it themselves. They're looking outward and trying to learn from the experiences of other people, the success of other people, and that helps flatten their learning curve. The fourth C, because we're running, I just realized, here we go again. We only got like 9 minutes left. Fourth C is compensation. what do I get from this? And compensation, I think the word itself, we automatically think money, right? Earnings. But compensation is more than that. Compensation is how you are fulfilled in the task you are achieving or embarking upon, and what you do. Number 2, by the way, is competence. So number 4 is compensation. Sean, any thoughts on that? You hit on this when we had our one-on-one. You dove a little deep into what compensation meant to you and what you think it means to the people you coach.
Right. Automatically we go to money, which is the least form of compensation. Right. Compensation is just Wendy's Googling questions from a movie. Compensation in the monetary form is a transfer. It's a meaningless piece of paper that allows you to achieve and enjoy your actual compensation. For some, it might be vacation time. For others, it's the ability to give to somebody else. For some, it's being able to go out on the water. Right? You have to know what makes you fulfilled. Be honest with yourself. What really gives you that sense of joy? It's the best word, the sense of joy. That's the compensation we seek. Sometimes money is involved to get there, but it's not about making money. It's about becoming joyous because you became curious, because you mastered, because you understood your effort is the only thing that you can control.
Well, compensation from the money aspect is very important too, because let's face it, there's not a one of us on this call, I don't think, if we're being honest with ourselves, that would put up with the type of brain damage we put up with if it wasn't that this vehicle, this real estate game, this real estate business, this real estate opportunity wasn't fueling our life's mission. So our success here provides revenue to allow us to fulfill a higher life calling or a higher vision for ourselves. So, if I wasn't doing this, I think I'd probably find myself in some way trying to coach. I just love coaching in a way. So I know that if I wasn't trying to coach real estate agents, I would most certainly be coaching something or someone, to the best of whether it's my dogs or maybe a little league baseball team. I just enjoy putting in an effort and trying to develop a person or my dog to have an outcome that I can look back and say, I did that. That's why I'm so big into, dog training. I love watching the outcomes, the investment of time, the patience, the grueling hours that you put in. All right. So number 5 is contribution. And so the 5 C's, again, I'm going to read them off to you. Number 1 is control. Number 2 is competence. Number 3 is curiosity. Number 4 is compensation. And the last one is contribution. And I think, again, this is the biggest and best of them all, really, because I think anytime you're doing something in your life, something meaningful to you, matters to you, and you have an outcome, that feeling that comes from contribution, that you are actually giving for or to something or somebody a bit of yourself that helps them grow or helps them have a successful outcome. To me, there's no higher emotional feeling that I've ever experienced than that of a contribution. I'm going to share a quick little story, and then I'd like you to weigh in here. But I'm not a father of any children of my own. I'm a stepfather to a wonderful, wonderful daughter who, if God blessed me with my own children tomorrow, it's not possible for me to love that child more than I love Michaela. That is not possible. So thankfully, she came into my life. She was 14 when I came into hers. I remember a moment where I realized I was contributing to her life and how much it meant to me. And it's a weird thing, but we were at a Costco, and she walked up to me and she said she loves apple juice. And she said, can I, with those Martinelli things, a little, Colleen's blowing me up here. I'm sorry, you guys. I'll try to, if you hear that. But she said, can I get some apple juice? And I said, of course, honey, you don't have to ask me. Put it in the cart. And she did, and she walked away. And it was at that moment, as a man who's never had children of his own, that I realized that I was contributing, that I was a meaningful part of her life, that I was providing, in a life that was spent buying what I wanted, when I wanted it, with no thought for the tomorrow. It hit me that now I have this responsibility. It's crazy where these lessons or things happen in life, right? But for me, the highest form of contribution for me happened at a Costco with my daughter asking to buy apple juice. Okay. So, yeah. Sean, what are your thoughts on contribution?
I think that I'm reminded of an old joke that when you're up to your ass in alligators, it's hard to remember you were there to drain the swamp. This business is alligators up to your ass most of the time. So what you're looking for is to get to that point where you can contribute to others, where you feel like you have breathing room. And I get a lot of us don't feel that in the beginning, certainly. But the trick of this is to realize that you can always be contributing. Even when you think things are out of control, you're giving to somebody. Somebody's watching you. And it is, as a human trait, the highest form of joy.
Yes.
It just is. And the more you do it, the more you realize, wow, I've never felt better than when I felt that Costco. I mean, it was a moment that had nothing to do with anything material, but an amazing feeling.
What a feeling, what a feeling. And for those of you that have kids and have had that at the beginning, I just have so much, I'm jealous. I wish I could have had all of that, because it means so much. Now I know what it means to be a parent. And so anyway, in my small way, that meant something more to me than anything I'd ever earned, more than anything I've ever gave. In that moment, that was a sense of contribution. Anyway, very, very.
Yes, and we're blessed in this business because we work with clients. And the ones who see what you've done and appreciate often will tell you what you just gave them. And it was more than a home. It was more than negotiating a good contract. This is where their children are going to grow up.
Yeah.
Right? This is where dreams are going to be created, memories are going to be stored.
Right.
You impacted their very life. And the ones who recognize it and tell you, oh my God, we have the opportunity over and over to realize that joy of contribution. It's such a blessed business that we're in.
Well, I will just, one final thought is that, there are a lot of, I don't, like the Tony Robbins of the world that make these grandiose claims that if you do all these things, they make it seem like if you're not thinking a certain way or acting a certain way, shame on you, right? You know what I'm talking about? Like, the more time you spend being uncomfortable with anything, the more time you'll be comfortable with it. And I don't think there is no magic walking on coals. The reason why people can go to a Tony Robbins event and be so highly motivated as to get to the point where they can walk in bare feet on coals, but then a month or two later, that motivation, all of that was driving them to be able to do that, they couldn't duplicate that because there's no permanence. It's a temporary fix. You've just been amped up to do something. Your problems aren't solved in that moment if you haven't, mastered what it is you mastered in that moment. So I would just say you have to be really uncomfortable as you look at the 5 C's and say that you have to do a deep dive, be comfortable being uncomfortable, but try to look at your goals and look at those 5 things and see what part they play in your journey to being self-actualized. Anyway, I think I'm into my psycho babble, but I'm done.
I agree with you. Motivation is a diminishing resource. You and I have both given motivational speeches. I will again. It's fun. It's fun for the audience. It's fun for me. It lasts about until you get in your car, maybe until you get home.
Yeah.
The 5 C's, if you guys will dive into that, it creates a personal discipline. And discipline will carry you where motivation can never, ever go.
Yeah, it's a grind. Success is
a grind, but it leads to a life of personal greatness.
Amen.